Hi, everyone. I'm Jim DeConnick from Western Carolina University, and I wrote this paper with another one of my colleagues here, Julie Johnson-Busman. This paper is on sales manager, servant leadership, and duty orientation's impact on job outcomes. Really, this study was done. I've done a lot of work in leadership, so has Julie, and we really don't want to look at servant leadership because it really hasn't been studied that much in the sales area. And the first study was to investigate how servant leadership impacts salesperson performance and turnover intentions among a sample of industrial salespeople. And our goal was to expand the body of knowledge by examining both servant leadership and duty orientation in the same model. And that's a key point of this study. Overall, if you look at our abstract, our findings indicate that the effects of servant leadership are mediated through duty orientation and supervisor trust. And these results also indicate that duty orientation has a direct and positive effect on job performance, while supervisor trust has negative impact on turnover intentions. As expected, job performance is negatively related to turnover intentions. Let me start here. For decades, Salesforce research has delved into the complexity and nuances of leadership theory. Research examining this area has scrutinized various theories. Again, when we talk about theories, obviously transformational, transactional leadership, leader-member exchange, and so forth. But really, in recent years, there's been a really growing interest in examining servant leadership and how it affects the attitudes and behaviors of salespeople. And one of the key, our contributions here, we're trying to extend the body of knowledge in the Salesforce area by examining a connection between servant leadership and duty orientation, an area that is yet to be studied, especially in the sales area. And this study examines the relation among those variables: servant leadership, performance, and turnover intentions. The overall purpose of the study is to investigate how servant leadership, directly or indirectly, through duty orientation and supervisor trust, influence performance and turnover intentions among the sample of industrial salespeople. Servant leadership was developed by Robert Greenleaf in 1977. He has some very famous quotes here about what it was, but really the key difference with servant leadership and the other forms of leadership is an emphasis on the concern for others. A servant leader is a servant first and then a leader, and that's the key difference between that and, of course, the other major leadership theories. And it has two distinct characteristics: serving first and selflessly focusing on others' needs. Servant leadership, similar to the other leadership theories, and we go transformational and ethical leadership in particular, in its emphasis on the needs of followers, trust, empowerment, honesty, and ethical behavior. So all these leadership theories tend to be fairly highly correlated, but servant leadership clearly is different. Unlike the other leadership theories, which emphasize organizational goals, the needs of followers is the primary emphasis of servant leadership. And that part I really have to emphasize. That is really the major difference. We're looking at people, not the organizational goals. And empirical research indicates that servant leadership is unique from other leadership theories. There's been 3 or 4 meta-analyses that have been done looking at servant leadership and other leadership theories, and they have clearly shown that servant leadership is different than the other leadership theories. So while it's highly correlated to those theories, a recent meta-analysis found that it's distinct from the other leadership theories. And then there's 3 other recent literature reviews that have shown that servant leadership is related to a variety of job attitudes and behaviors. This is a very key point here. Servant leadership has been shown to play a more significant role in employee job attitudes and behavior as compared to the other leadership theories. And that was found in one of the meta-analyses that was done. Now we're going to look at supervisor trust. Supervisor trust is defined as the amount of confidence salespeople have in the fairness and integrity of their leader. And supervisor trust has been the focus of much research, both in sales and non-sales studies, because of its significant relationship with these employees' attitudes and behaviors. Now, in particular with sales research, trust in the sales manager is related to ethical behavior, job satisfaction, organizational justice, organizational identification, and turnover intention. I want to now turn to duty orientation and talk about that part of our study. Duty orientation is a psychological state where a person has an obligation to an organization or group. It consists of three important elements, which are duty to the mission, utilizing additional sacrifice and effort to accomplish the group organization's task and mission, the duty to members, faithfully serving organizational or group members, and finally, duty of codes. And that is defined as maintaining ethical values and honor the team's codes according to the norms established by the group. Collectively, these three elements will induce individuals to behave according to their duties within the organization or group. They'll behave in ways that benefit the group organization, although they may not benefit from these behaviors individually. And this is, again, part of the reason we're doing this study. No study has analyzed the relationship among duty orientation, servant leadership, and trust. And that includes in non-sales areas. No study exists with those three variables in their model. While the relationship between duty orientation and supervisor trust has been examined, and the relationship between servant leadership and supervisor trust has been studied, there's no research on the relationship between servant leadership and duty orientation. In addition, now we look at the relationship among these three variables again. No empirical research exists investigating the relationship between servant leadership and duty orientation. However, theoretically, since both variables measure some of the same leader characteristics, support exists for hypothesizing that salespeople working for sales managers who are servant leaders will display greater duty orientation. So our first hypothesis is servant leadership is positively related to duty orientation. Next part really of our literature review here is many studies have examined the relationship between various leadership styles and supervisor trust. Again, as I said, meta-analyses have been done, and they report a significant positive correlation between these leadership styles and supervisor trust. So really our second hypothesis is pretty easy. Servant leadership is positively related to supervisor trust. And theoretically, a salesperson who has a high level of duty orientation should perform at a higher level. Employees who report a high level of duty orientation support the organization, are willing to make personal sacrifice to support the organization's mission, and make a sincere effort to get the job done, even under difficult circumstances. And that leads to our third hypothesis. Duty orientation is positively related to job performance. Next point here, research has shown that supervisor trust has a high negative correlation to turnover retentions. And again, there's many studies have shown that relationship. And that's really the fourth hypothesis. And then the relationship between job performance, turnover intentions has been extensively studied for 40 years. Many studies, again, sales and non-sales, have found that. And therefore, it leads to our fifth hypothesis. Job performance is related negatively to turnover intentions. So there are 5 hypotheses. But the other really important part of this study is we looked at 2 research questions. First, the relationship between servant leadership and performance will be examined. The relationship between servant leadership and performance is unclear. Some studies show that servant leadership influences job performance directly, while other studies indicate that the relationship is mediated by other variables. Very few studies have examined the relationship with salespeople. Thus, additional research is needed to investigate the relationship among industrial salespeople. So our first research question is the relationship between servant leadership and salesperson performance direct or indirect through other variables? And then we asked a second research question. And that one really involves the relationship between servant leadership and turnover intentions. Only 3 studies involving salespeople have included both servant leadership and turnover intentions in their study. Given the sparse Salesforce research, including both variables, We believe additional research examining this relationship is warranted. Again, there's very few studies, especially when you look at in non-sales areas where servant leadership has been studied quite a bit. Only 3 studies have even looked at this relationship here in sales. So that leads us to our second research question. Is the relationship between servant leadership and turnover intentions direct or indirect through other variables? Here's our sample here. A list of sales managers was purchased by a company specializing in direct mailing lists, and this procedure has been done in other studies in sales. What happened when we sent out the request? We explained to the sales managers the purpose of the study. We asked them for their participation and get their participation from their salespeople in completing the online survey. And very importantly, as is done, every salesperson was promised confidentiality. None of these results were shared with the sales managers. So we got a total of 76 sales managers, 19%, which is again pretty common for these type of surveys. And we had 203 salespeople, which is a good group. And that represented 53.4% of all possible responses. And they then completed the questionnaire. Construct validity is very important in any study. So there's several ways to actually measure it. First is variance extracted, and they range from 0.62 to 0.85. It has to be really above 0.5. Second, we looked at the standardized loadings, again, a 0.5 or higher. As you can see here, all standardized loadings were very high. Servant leadership, 0.68, 0.77, duty orientation, 0.75 to 81. Again, if you look at the other variables, they're all high. Again, indicating very strong construct validity. Third, the variance extracted estimates among the factors was greater than the square of the correlation, which also indicates discriminant validity. So we have very strong belief that our study has strong validity. Common method bias, and really Potsikov wrote an article quite a few years ago, I believe it was in 2003, talking about the real problems with common method bias and need to check for it. We did really 2 steps. Number one, all items were dispersed randomly in the survey, which is really a big deal. That way, if someone just goes down and starts circling numbers or goes on the line and does it, you start to realize maybe they didn't take it seriously. In our case, I think we do believe they took it very seriously, looking at our responses. And the second, we used Harmon's one-factor test and indicated that 19.3% of the variance was explained, which is below the suggested 50% level. Let me make sense. I know Harmon's has been highly criticized, but some recent research has been done, which is actually cited in our paper, that actually kind of disputes some of the problems that people have said with Harmon's test. It is really more of a valid measure than some originally thought. And we look at our model fit. We actually had a good fit. We did structural equation modeling. We use Literal. So if you look at our CFA model, it met or exceeded these cutoff values by Hugh and Bantler. Again, very good, especially when you look at RMR at 0.043. That's a very good number. RMSA at 0.052 is also very good. Anything below 0.05 is considered excellent. So we're very close to that cutoff point. And then when we had the CFA model that had this very good fit, then we did the hypothesized model. Once again, if you notice down here, all the results look very good again. Standard RMR, 0.05, which is right at that very good point. RMSCA was a little better, 0.051 than the CFA. Again, it's showing that our hypothesized model had a very good fit. And all the hypotheses were supported. I think that was based on the thorough literature review we did. We really did think there would be strong support. So if you look here are the numbers. Servant leadership to duty orientation, pretty strong beta coefficient. Now the highest one is servant leadership. This is key, a very important one, highly related positively to supervisor trust, a 0.52 coefficient. Again, duty orientation to performance. So salespeople have a higher duty orientation, perform at a higher level for their company. Finally, supervisor trust related negatively to turnover intentions. And last, performance as anticipated, negatively related to turnover intentions. Now, what we really get into is another very important part of the study, the research questions. Here they were again. We tested the research, the direct relationship with leadership and performance and leadership and turnover intentions. We found they were not significant. So I'm going to kind of end. I know we're running a little bit short of time here. The bottom line is, I think this is a very, very important part of our study. We found no significant relationship, a direct relationship between the variables. We didn't find that. We found everything's mediated. So I think this really shows we need further research to find out, with other type of salespeople, maybe a single company, what is the relationship between these two variables? Is it mediated or is it direct? We said it was mediated. I want to end here, as I know, again, we're running a little short of time. I want to very much thank you for allowing this opportunity to present this paper. And feel free, if you have any questions, you could contact us directly. Okay. And here's some conclusion a little bit. But again, thank you so much.